I should have known something was wrong the moment my mother smiled at me that morning. It wasn't her usual tight-lipped performance smile, the one she wore when relatives visited or when she needed to appear like Mother of the Year at PTA meetings. This smile was different, wider, almost excited, and my mother was never excited about anything that involved me. That honor was reserved exclusively for my younger sister, Madison. "Congratulations, sweetheart," she said, handing me a champagne flute filled with what looked like orange juice. I made mimosas for my graduate. I stared at the glass like it was a live grenade. My mother had never called me sweetheart. Not once in my 22 years of existence. The woman who forgot my birthday 3 years running was suddenly making me celebratory drinks? "Mom, I don't really drink," I said carefully, setting the glass down on the kitchen counter. Her smile didn't waver. If anything, it grew. "Oh, come on, Olivia. It's your college graduation day. One little drink won't hurt. I made it special just for you. Just for me." Those 3 words sent ice down my spine. Madison waltzed into the kitchen at that exact moment, her blonde hair perfect despite having just woken up, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my entire graduation outfit. She was 19, still in community college, but you'd think she was the one receiving a bachelor's degree in engineering with highest honors based on how my parents treated her. "Ooh, mimosas." Madison reached for my glass. "No." My mother's hand shot out with surprising speed, pulling the glass away. "That one's Olivia's. I'll make you your own, honey." The way she emphasized Olivia's made my stomach turn. I watched as my mother poured a second glass from a different pitcher, one I hadn't even noticed sitting on the counter. She handed it to Madison with that same unsettling smile. Something was very, very wrong here. I'd spent my entire life being the invisible daughter. The one who didn't get dance lessons or designer clothes. The one whose achievements were met with lukewarm, "That's nice, dear," responses, while Madison's C+ on a history test warranted a celebration dinner. I'd made peace with it mostly. I'd learned to be self-sufficient, to not need their validation. But this sudden attention? This was dangerous. "I really should get ready," I said, backing toward the doorway. "The ceremony starts at 2, and I need to pick up my cap and gown. Drink first." My mother's voice had shifted. The sweetness was gone, replaced by something sharp and commanding. "I went through all this trouble, Olivia. The least you can do is appreciate it." Madison sipped her mimosa, scrolling through her phone, completely oblivious to the tension crackling through the kitchen like static electricity. I looked at my glass, then at Madison's, then at my mother's face, and I saw it. Just for a second, a flash of something cold and calculating in her eyes. This wasn't about celebrating me. This was about something else entirely. My hand trembled slightly as I picked up the glass. The liquid inside was a pale orange, innocuous looking. I brought it close to my nose, pretending to smell it appreciatively, while my mind raced through possibilities. Was she trying to make me sick so I'd miss graduation? Was this some twisted punishment for something I didn't even know I'd done? Or was it worse than that? "To your future," my mother said, raising her own glass. She wasn't drinking from it, I noticed. Just holding it. Waiting. Madison had already downed half of hers, still glued to her phone. And then I remembered something. A conversation I'd overheard 3 weeks ago, late at night when they thought I was asleep. My mother's voice drifting up through the heating vents. "She cannot be valedictorian, Richard. Do you understand what that means? Do you know who'll be watching that speech?" My father's response had been too quiet to hear. But my mother's next words had been crystal clear. "Madison deserves that scholarship more. Madison is the one who should be recognized. We'll figure something out. The scholarship. The full ride to Stanford for graduate school that came with being valedictorian. The opportunity that would change my entire life." Madison had applied to Stanford and been rejected. She'd been furious for weeks. I looked down at my drink with new understanding. "Actually, Mom," I said slowly, a plan forming in my mind even as my heart pounded against my ribs, "I'm feeling really special today. Would you mind if Madison and I took a graduation photo together? You know, sister bonding moment?" My mother's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's nice, dear. But drink first. It's getting warm." "Just one quick photo," I insisted, pulling out my phone with my free hand. "Come on, Mads. Graduation selfie." Madison rolled her eyes but stood up, bringing her glass with her. "Fine, but make it fast. Tyler's picking me up in an hour." I moved to stand next to her, both of us holding our champagne flutes. I raised my phone, angling it for a selfie, and said, "On 3 we both take a sip, okay? It'll look so cute." "Whatever," Madison said. 1, 2. On 2, I switched our glasses. It happened in less than a second. A smooth rotation of my wrist as I lowered my phone hand, pivoting both glasses in a movement I'd practiced 1,000 times as a barista in college. Madison was looking at the phone camera. My mother was checking her own phone, probably timing something. Neither of them noticed. 3. I said brightly, and brought what had been Madison's glass to my lips. Madison drank deeply from what had been mine, grimacing slightly. This one tastes weird, Mom. Did you put too much champagne in it? My mother's head snapped up, her face going pale. What? I said it tastes. Madison stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes went unfocused. The glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the tile floor. I watched, horror and vindication warring in my chest, as my sister's knees buckled. My mother screamed and lunged forward, catching Madison before she hit the ground. No, no, no. Madison. Baby, wake up. But Madison's eyes had rolled back in her head, her body going limp in our mother's arms. I stood frozen, my untouched glass still in my hand, watching my mother shake my unconscious sister, watching the exact scenario that had been meant for me unfold before my eyes. Call 911. My mother shrieked at me, tears streaming down her face. Call them right now. I pulled out my phone slowly, deliberately. What happened to her, Mom? I asked, my voice eerily calm. What was in that drink? My mother's eyes met mine, and in that moment we both knew. She knew I'd switched the glasses. She knew I'd figured it out. And she knew that whatever had been meant to destroy me had just destroyed the daughter she actually loved instead. You, she started, her voice venomous. But she couldn't finish that sentence. Not without admitting what she'd done. Not without confessing that she'd deliberately drugged her own daughter. Madison's breathing had become shallow, her lips taking on a bluish tint. I dialed 911, my finger hovering over the call button. Tell me what you gave her, I said quietly. Tell me right now, or I'm not making this call. And whatever happens to Madison will be on you. My mother's face contorted with rage and terror, and something else. The dawning realization that she'd just poisoned the wrong daughter, and that I held all the cards now. Olivia, please, she whispered. What? Did you give her? The words that came out of my mother's mouth next would change everything. They would shatter what was left of our family, expose secrets that went back years, and reveal a conspiracy that was so much bigger than I could have possibly imagined. But they would also save Madison's life, and give me the weapon I needed to finally fight back. What my mother confessed in that moment, with my sister dying on the kitchen floor and sirens still minutes away, wasn't just about a drugged drink at graduation. It was about a truth so devastating that once I heard it, there would be no going back. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing your locations. Now back to the story. Rohypnol, my mother whispered, the word barely audible over Madison's labored breathing. 2 pills dissolved in the orange juice. She was only supposed to sleep through graduation, wake up confused, miss the ceremony. I hit the call button. 911, what's your emergency? My sister's been drugged, I said, my voice mechanical, distant, like it belonged to someone else. She's unconscious and her breathing is shallow. She ingested Rohypnol approximately 3 minutes ago. The operator's questions came rapid fire. I answered them automatically. Our address, Madison's age, her symptoms, while watching my mother cradle Madison's limp body, rocking back and forth like she was holding a baby. Tears streamed down her face, her perfectly applied makeup running in dark rivulets. Ambulance is 2 minutes out, the operator said. Stay on the line with me. But I was barely listening anymore. Because while my mother wept over Madison, my father had appeared in the doorway. Richard Hartwell stood there in his weekend golf clothes, his face the color of old paper. He looked at Madison unconscious on the floor, at the shattered glass, at my mother's devastated face. Then his eyes found mine. What did you do? He asked, his voice deadly quiet. The question was directed at me. Not my mother. Me. Something inside me snapped. What did I do? I laughed, and it sounded unhinged even to my own ears. Dad, Mom just tried to drug me with roofies, so I'd miss my own graduation. I switched the glasses. Madison drank what was meant for me. My father's expression didn't change. No shock. No disbelief. Just a slow, resigned closing of his eyes, like I'd confirmed something he'd already known. That's when I realized the second devastating truth of the day. He'd known. My father had known exactly what my mother was planning. You were in on it, I breathed. Both of you. Olivia, it's not what you think. My father started. Then what is it? I screamed, my composure finally shattering. What could possibly justify this? The scholarship? You were willing to drug your own daughter over a fucking scholarship. It's not about the scholarship, my mother shrieked from the floor, her grief momentarily overtaken by rage. It was never about the scholarship. The sirens were getting closer now, their wailing cutting through the morning air. Then what? I demanded. Tell me what could possibly be worth this. My mother looked up at me, mascara-stained and wild-eyed, still cradling Madison's unconscious form. What she said next made no sense at all. Madison isn't your sister. The words hung in the air like smoke. She's your daughter. The kitchen tilted. Or maybe I did. I grabbed the counter to steady myself, my brain refusing to process what I'd just heard. That's insane, I whispered. I'm 22. Madison is 19. I would have been 3 years old. You were 13. My mother cut me off, her voice flat now, emotionless. 13 years old when you gave birth to her. The room spun. Memories I didn't have clawed at the edges of my consciousness. I was 13 when something changed in our family, when the dynamics shifted in ways I'd never understood. 13 when my parents suddenly had a miracle baby, after years of failed fertility treatments. 13 when I lost an entire year of my life to what they'd called a severe illness, that kept me homeschooled and isolated. No, I said, but my voice had no conviction. You were raped, my mother continued, each word precise and cruel. At summer camp. You came home and 3 months later you told me you'd been feeling sick. I took you to the doctor, and they confirmed you were pregnant. The 911 operator was saying something, but the phone had slipped from my numb fingers. You wanted to keep the baby, my father said quietly, stepping into the kitchen. You were just a child yourself, but you were adamant. You said you'd already lost too much, that you couldn't lose the baby too. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. We made a decision, my mother said. We told everyone I was pregnant. We homeschooled you for a year, told people you had a compromised immune system. When you gave birth, we registered Madison as ours. We thought we were protecting you, giving you your life back. Protecting me? The words came out strangled. You took my child and raised her as your own. You made me watch you be her mother for 19 years. You were 13, my mother screamed. You were a baby yourself. What kind of life would you have had as a teenage mother? What kind of life would she have had? The ambulance screeched to a halt outside. Footsteps pounded up the walkway. So this was about what? I asked, my voice breaking. Madison finding out the truth? She was going to discover that her perfect parents aren't her real parents at all. She can never know, my father said urgently as the paramedics burst through the door. Olivia, she can never know. It would destroy her. The paramedics swarmed around Madison, asking rapid-fire questions. My mother was crying, explaining about the Rohypnol, claiming it was an accident, that Madison had gotten into her prescription medication. I stood there, watching them load the daughter I never knew I had onto a stretcher, and felt something inside me crystallize into cold, hard certainty. They had stolen 9 years of my life. They had drugged me today to protect their lie. And they expected me to just, what? Go along with it? Smile at graduation, and pretend this was a normal family? Miss. One of the paramedics was talking to me. Are you riding with us to the hospital? I looked at my mother's pleading face. At my father's warning expression. Yes, I said. I'm riding with my sister. The word sister tasted like poison on my tongue. As they wheeled Madison out, I grabbed my purse and followed. Behind me, I heard my mother whisper to my father. She's going to ruin everything. But she was wrong. I wasn't going to ruin everything. I was going to burn it all down. The ambulance doors closed, and through the window, I watched my parents standing in the driveway, looking small and terrified. They thought they knew what I was planning. They thought I'd cause a scene at the hospital, maybe tell Madison everything in a moment of rage. They had no idea what I was actually going to do. Because during that ride to the hospital, with Madison's unconscious form hooked up to monitors and the paramedics working frantically to stabilize her, I made a series of decisions that would set off a chain reaction they could never have anticipated. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. The first one was to the police, to report the drugging, to make sure there was an official record. The second was to my academic advisor at the university, to ask a very specific question about graduation ceremony protocols. The third call was to someone I hadn't spoken to in 6 months, someone who worked for a very particular type of media outlet. And the fourth call was to a lawyer who specialized in a very specific type of family law. By the time we reached the hospital, I had set in motion events that would explode across social media, make national news, and force the truth into the light in the most public way possible. My parents had spent 19 years building a perfect lie. I was about to spend the next 6 hours dismantling it piece by piece. But first, Madison had to wake up. Because what I needed to tell her, what she deserved to know, couldn't wait any longer. Even if it shattered her world the way mine had just been shattered. Even if it meant losing the only sister I'd ever known, to gain the daughter I never got to raise. The hospital doors slid open, and I followed the gurney inside, my phone already buzzing with responses to my calls. Everything was about to change, and my mother's worst nightmare was about to come true. Madison's eyes fluttered open at 11:47 a.m., approximately 2 hours before I was supposed to walk across that graduation stage. I was sitting in the chair beside her hospital bed, watching the monitors, watching her chest rise and fall, and trying to reconcile the girl I'd grown up resenting with the reality of what she actually was to me. My daughter. The words still felt impossible. Liv. Her voice was scratchy, confused. What happened? Before I could answer, my mother burst into the room like a hurricane, my father close behind her. They'd been at the hospital for an hour, but the police had been questioning them, a consequence of my first phone call. Their faces were drawn, exhausted, terrified. Baby! My mother rushed to Madison's other side, grabbing her hand. Oh, thank God you're okay. You're okay. Madison blinked slowly, trying to focus. I feel weird. Everything's fuzzy. Her eyes found mine. Why are we at the hospital? This was the moment. The choice that would define everything that came next. I could stay silent. Let my parents spin their story. Protect the lie for Madison's sake, maybe even for my own. After all, what good would the truth do now? The damage was done. Madison had lived 19 years as their daughter. She was happy. Loved. She had a life that worked. But then I remembered the glass in my hand. The smile on my mother's face. The casual cruelty of being willing to drug your own child to maintain a facade. And I remembered something else. I never got to choose. Not when I was 13 and pregnant. Not when they took my baby and called her theirs. Not in all the years that followed. Madison deserved a choice. Even if it destroyed her. Even if it destroyed us all. Mom drugged you, I said quietly. The room went silent except for the beeping of Madison's monitors. What? Madison laughed weakly, like I'd made a joke she didn't understand. No, that's... Liv, what are you talking about? Olivia, don't, my father warned, his voice carrying a threat. Don't do this to her. Not now. But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at Madison, watching her face as confusion slowly shifted toward something else. Fear, maybe. Or the beginning of understanding. The mimosa Mom made this morning, I continued. She put Rohypnol in it. 2 pills. She meant it for me, to make me miss graduation. But I switched our glasses. Madison's eyes widened. She looked at our mother, waiting for the denial. Waiting for Mom to laugh and explain how ridiculous this was, how I must have hit my head or gone crazy or... But my mother's face told a different story. You poisoned me? Madison's voice was small, childlike. Mom, you poisoned me? It wasn't meant for you, my mother cried, and I watched Madison flinch at the admission. Sweetheart, you have to understand, it was supposed to be Olivia, just to make her sleep, just for a few hours. You're not making this better, my father said sharply, but it was too late. Madison was pulling away from our mother's grip, her monitors starting to beep more urgently as her heart rate climbed. You tried to drug Liv? Your own daughter? Why would you? She stopped, looking between the three of us. What is happening? What is going on? There's more, I said. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably my lawyer calling back, but I ignored it. Madison, I need you to listen to me very carefully. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane, but it's true. All of it. Olivia, I'm warning you, my father said, stepping forward. For the first time in my life, I saw him as genuinely threatening. If you do this, there's no going back. You'll destroy her. Is that what you want? What I want, I said, my voice shaking with rage, is to stop living in a house built on lies. What I want is for someone in this family to actually care about the truth for once. I turned back to Madison, who was staring at me with wide, frightened eyes. You're not my sister, I said. You're my daughter. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Madison stared at me. Then she laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. Okay, you're insane. You've actually lost your mind. I was 13, I continued, my voice steady despite the tears starting to stream down my face. I was raped at summer camp. I got pregnant. Mom and Dad made me hide it, told everyone Mom was pregnant instead. When you were born, they took you. They registered you as theirs. They've been raising you as their daughter for 19 years. That's not. Madison shook her head violently. No. No, that's not possible. That would mean. She looked at our mother, waiting for the denial. Begging for it. My mother's face crumpled. We were protecting you both, she whispered. Madison's world shattered. I watched it happen in real time. Watched the foundation of her identity crack and collapse like a building in an earthquake. You're lying, she said, but there was no conviction in it. Mom, tell her she's lying. Tell her this is some sick joke. Madison, sweetheart. Don't call me that. Madison screamed, and several nurses came running. Don't you dare call me that. You're not my mother. She is. She pointed at me, her hand shaking. She's my mother and you stole me from her. The nurses were trying to calm her, checking her vitals, asking what was wrong. My father was trying to explain, but his words were drowned out by Madison's sobs, deep, wrenching sounds that tore at something primal in my chest. My daughter was crying, and every instinct I had was screaming at me to comfort her. But I couldn't, because I was also the person who'd just destroyed her entire sense of self. Everyone out, one of the nurses said firmly. Family only, and even then only if you can keep calm. She needs to rest. I'm her mother, my mother said automatically. No, she's not, Madison cried. She's a liar. They're all liars. Miss, I need you to calm down. It took 3 nurses and a sedative to finally quiet Madison. As her eyes grew heavy and her sobs turned to whimpers, she looked at me one last time. Did you know? She asked. All this time, did you know? No, I said honestly. I found out today. Same time you did. She nodded slowly, her eyes drifting closed. Good, she murmured. At least you didn't lie to me too. Then she was asleep, and the nurses were ushering us all out into the hallway. My mother collapsed against the wall, sobbing. My father stood rigid, his face a mask of controlled fury. And I stood between them, feeling like I'd just detonated a nuclear bomb in the middle of our family. I hope you're happy, my mother hissed at me through her tears. You just destroyed that girl's life. You destroyed her life, I shot back. You destroyed both our lives. I just told her the truth. The truth. My father's voice was cold. The truth is that we loved her. We gave her a beautiful life. We protected her from the trauma of knowing she was born from rape. What have you given her, Olivia? What has your truth given her besides pain? The words hit harder than I expected. Because he was right in a horrible way. Madison was sedated in a hospital bed, her identity in tatters, because I'd decided honesty was more important than her peace. But before I could question myself further, my phone rang. It was my academic advisor. Olivia, Dr. Chen's voice was gentle. I've made the arrangements you requested. Are you sure about this? I looked at my parents, at the hospital room where my daughter slept, at the ruins of the only family I'd ever known. I'm sure, I said. What arrangements? My father demanded. I smiled, and it felt like breaking glass. You wanted to make sure Madison got the recognition she deserved, right? You wanted the world to see what a perfect family we are. My mother's face went pale. What did you do? I'm still giving my valedictorian speech, I said. At 2 p.m., just like planned. And I'm going to tell everyone the truth. Every single bit of it. The rape. The pregnancy. The lies. All of it. You can't, my father breathed. Olivia, there are 5,000 people attending that graduation. It'll be live-streamed. You'll destroy our family's reputation, your own future. Our family's reputation was built on stealing my child, I interrupted. And my future? Mom already tried to destroy that this morning when she drugged me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from the journalist I'd contacted. We're running the story at 1:30 p.m. Just in time for your speech. This is going to be huge. I showed them the text. Watched the blood drain from both their faces. You called the press, my mother whispered. You actually called the press. I called a lot of people, I said. The press. A lawyer who specializes in parental rights cases. And I've already filed a police report about the drugging. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home. You're going to stay there. And you're going to wait while I do what you should have done 19 years ago. Tell the truth. And if we don't? My father asked. I pulled up another text on my phone. This one was from my lawyer. Then my attorney files for emergency custody of Madison as her biological mother. And we let a court decide who was really protecting her all these years. You or me. It was a bluff. I had no idea if I could actually get custody. But the fear on their faces told me they weren't sure either. You have 1 hour to decide, I said. Come to the graduation and cause a scene, and I go nuclear with every legal option I have. Stay home, and maybe we can find a way through this that doesn't destroy us all. I walked away from them then, down the hospital corridor, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Behind me, I heard my mother sobbing. But I didn't look back. I had a graduation to attend, a speech to give, and a truth to tell that had been buried for far too long. What I didn't know, what none of us knew yet, was that the press had already started digging. And what they were about to uncover went far deeper than a family secret. It went all the way back to that summer camp 19 years ago, to a crime that had never been reported, and to a name I'd blocked out of my memory so completely that even now, I couldn't recall it. But in 90 minutes, that name would be on every news site in the country. And the person behind it would do anything to keep it buried. Anything at all. The graduation ceremony was already in progress when I arrived. I'd left the hospital at 1:15 p.m., stopped at a coffee shop to change into my cap and gown, and walked onto campus at 1:47 p.m., exactly 13 minutes before the news story was scheduled to break. My phone had been buzzing nonstop. Texts from my parents, alternating between threats and desperate pleas. Messages from my lawyer with updates. Alerts from the journalist telling me the story was ready to publish. But it was the email that arrived at 1:52 p.m. that made my blood run cold. The subject line was simple. You need to read this before you go on stage. It was from the journalist Marcus Chun. We'd met in a criminal justice class sophomore year, stayed friends even after he'd graduated and taken a job with a major investigative news outlet. When I'd called him this morning with the story, he'd been shocked but interested. A respected family covering up the rape and pregnancy of their 13-year-old daughter was exactly the kind of story he specialized in. But his email said he'd found something else. Something bigger. I opened it with shaking hands. Olivia, we ran your summer camp through our databases. Camp Pinewood, summer 2012. Found 15 other girls who attended that same session. Started making calls. 3 of them reported incidents to camp counselors that summer. All brushed aside, never investigated. One of them gave me a name. A counselor named James Hartwell. Your father's younger brother. I'm sorry. The article publishes in 6 minutes with this information. Call me. The world tilted. James Hartwell. Uncle James. The fun uncle who'd convinced my parents to let me attend that camp. Who'd been a counselor there. Who'd visited our family exactly twice after that summer, and then disappeared from our lives completely. My father's brother had raped me. And my parents had known. They'd taken his victim, me, and turned me into their convenient solution to infertility. They'd watched me give birth to his child, and then raised her as their own. They'd let him disappear without consequences. They'd protected him. Olivia Hartwell? A graduation coordinator appeared at my elbow, clipboard in hand. You're on in 5 minutes. We need you backstage. I followed her numbly, my mind reeling. Around us, hundreds of graduating students were seated, thousands of family members filling the stands. The ceremony was being live-streamed to tens of thousands more. At 1:58 p.m., my phone exploded with notifications. The article had gone live. By 1:59 p.m., people in the audience were checking their phones, seeing the breaking news alerts. I watched a wave of whispers ripple through the crowd like wind through wheat. At 2 p.m. exactly, the university president called my name. Our valedictorian, graduating summa cum laude with a degree in engineering, Olivia Hartwell. The applause was scattered, confused. People were staring at me as I walked across the stage, and I knew they were seeing the girl from the article that had just broken. The 13-year-old rape victim. The mother who'd had her baby stolen. I reached the podium and looked out at the sea of faces. My parents weren't there. I knew they wouldn't be. But in the front row, I spotted campus security officers standing alert. My lawyer had warned them I might need protection. From my own family. I'd written a speech weeks ago. Something inspirational about overcoming challenges and embracing the future. It was on the podium in front of me, neatly printed. I ignored it completely. 13 years ago, I began, my voice surprisingly steady. I was raped by my uncle at summer camp. I was 13 years old. The silence that fell over the amphitheater was absolute. When I came home and told my mother I was pregnant, she didn't call the police. She didn't press charges. She didn't get me counseling or help or any of the things a child in that situation desperately needs. My hands gripped the podium. Instead, she saw an opportunity. Someone in the audience gasped. Phones were up everywhere now, recording. My parents had been trying to have another child for years. Failed fertility treatments. Multiple miscarriages. And here I was, their 13-year-old daughter, pregnant with their grandchild. I paused, letting that sink in. So they made a decision. They told everyone my mother was pregnant. They homeschooled me, isolated me, and when I gave birth, they took my baby and registered her as their own daughter. The whispers were growing louder. I could see administrators off to the side, debating whether to cut my microphone. But they didn't dare. Not with thousands of phones recording everything. For 19 years, I watched them raise my daughter as my sister. I watched them love her in ways they never loved me. I watched them give her every opportunity, every advantage, while treating me like I was invisible. And I never knew why. My voice broke slightly. Until this morning, when my mother tried to drug me with Rohypnol, so I'd miss this ceremony. A woman in the front row stood up, shouting, "That's a lie." I recognized her, one of my mother's book club friends. "Is it?" I asked calmly. "Because my sister, my daughter, is currently in the hospital recovering from the roofies that were meant for me. There's a police report. There are medical records. And as of 2 minutes ago, there's a news article that names my uncle as my rapist and details how my parents covered it up." I pulled out my phone and pulled up the article. Held it up to show the crowd, even though I knew most of them had already seen it. James Hartwell, I read, brother of Richard Hartwell, was a counselor at Camp Pinewood in the summer of 2012. According to camp records and witness statements, at least 4 girls reported inappropriate behavior by Hartwell to camp administrators, who took no action. 3 months after that summer ended, his 13-year-old niece, Olivia Hartwell, was found to be pregnant. The amphitheater had erupted into chaos. People were shouting questions, security was moving through the crowd, administrators were frantically talking into radios. But I wasn't done. "My parents had a choice," I said, my voice rising over the noise. "They could have protected me. They could have gotten me help. They could have made sure my rapist faced justice. Instead, they chose to protect him. They sent him away quietly, let him vanish, and they used my trauma to get what they wanted. A baby they could claim as their own, and this morning," I continued, my voice shaking with fury now, "when my academic achievements threatened to expose their perfect lie, when the spotlight of being valedictorian risked someone asking questions, risked their secret coming out, they decided it was easier to drug me than to let the truth be told." I looked directly into the camera that was broadcasting this live. "Madison Hartwell, my daughter, if you're watching this from your hospital bed, I want you to know something. I didn't choose to give you up. I didn't abandon you. I was a child myself, and they took that choice away from me. They took you away from me." Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. I would have loved you. God, I would have loved you so much. And maybe we wouldn't have had the perfect house or the designer clothes or any of the things they gave you. But you would have had the truth. You would have had a mother who chose you, not one who stole you. The university president was approaching the podium now, clearly intending to end this. But I had one more thing to say. To every person who's been told their trauma is shameful, that it's easier to bury than to face, you deserve better. You deserve the truth, even when it's painful. Especially when it's painful. I gripped the podium harder. And to my parents, who are probably watching this right now, you didn't protect us. You protected yourselves. You protected a rapist. You built your perfect family on the foundation of a crime, and you expected me to be grateful for it. I pulled off my cap and gown, letting them fall to the stage. I don't want your diploma. I don't want your scholarship. I don't want anything that came from a system that helped you hide what you did. I looked out at the stunned audience. The truth is worth more than any degree. And then I walked off the stage. The amphitheater exploded behind me. I could hear the president trying to restore order, could hear the gasps and shouts and chaos. But I kept walking, through the backstage area, out the back in trance, into the parking lot where my lawyer was waiting by her car. "That was either the bravest or most reckless thing I've ever witnessed," Jennifer Martinez said, holding open the passenger door. "Get in. We need to go now." "Why?" I asked, sliding into the seat. "Because your father just showed up at the hospital," she said grimly, starting the engine. "He's trying to take Madison out of there against medical advice. Claims he has custody rights, and she's being held against her will." My blood ran cold. "He's running. He knows what's coming, and he's trying to take her and run." "Probably," Jennifer agreed, speeding out of the parking lot. "Which is why we need to get there first. I've already filed the emergency custody petition. If we can get in front of a judge in the next hour, we might be able to stop him." My phone was ringing constantly now. Unknown numbers, reporters probably. But then I saw one I recognized, Marcus Chun, the journalist. I answered. Olivia, are you safe? He asked immediately. For now. What's wrong? We found James Hartwell, he said. Your uncle. He's been living in Oregon under a different name for the past 15 years. Works at another summer camp. The implications hit me like a truck. He's been around children this whole time. Yeah. And the camp has no idea about his past because he changed his name legally in 2013, 1 year after he assaulted you. Your parents had to have helped him do it. There's no other explanation. Another piece clicked into place. My parents hadn't just covered up what happened to me. They'd actively helped my rapist escape justice and continue to have access to vulnerable children. I'm forwarding you something, Marcus said. It's a statement from one of the other victims from your summer camp. She's willing to testify. She's been waiting 19 years for someone to believe her. My phone buzzed with the incoming email. I opened it and read. My name is Sarah Mitchell. In the summer of 2012, I was 12 years old at Camp Pinewood. James Hartwell assaulted me in the arts and crafts cabin. When I told the camp director, she said I was making it up for attention. When I told my parents, they said I must have misunderstood what happened. I've spent 19 years thinking I was crazy, that maybe it didn't happen the way I remembered. Today I learned that I wasn't the only one, that there were other girls, that one of them got pregnant. I'm coming forward because I should have been believed then. We all should have been believed. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. How many more were there, Marcus? We've identified 6 so far. All from that summer. All between 11 and 14 years old. All told adults who did nothing. He paused. Your parents knew, Olivia. The camp director sent a letter to all parents at the end of that summer about unfounded allegations against a staff member. Your parents would have received it. They knew other girls were coming forward, and they still chose to protect him. To protect themselves, I corrected bitterly. If James went to prison, their perfect solution to infertility disappeared. They needed me to carry that baby to term. They needed everyone to believe their lie. We were pulling into the hospital parking lot now. I could see police cars near the entrance, and my stomach dropped. I have to go, I told Marcus. Keep digging. Find everyone he hurt. Make sure everyone knows what they did. Already on it. Olivia, be careful. People who cover up crimes like this for 20 years don't just give up quietly. He was right to be worried. Because when Jennifer and I rushed through the hospital doors, we found my father in the lobby with Madison in a wheelchair, her hospital gown covered by his jacket. 2 police officers stood between them and the exit, and my father was screaming about parental rights and kidnapping. Madison looked sedated, confused, barely conscious. Stop! I shouted, running toward them. My father's head snapped toward me, and the look on his face was pure hatred. You've done enough, he snarled. You've destroyed this family with your selfishness, and I won't let you destroy her too. Destroy her? I laughed incredulously. Dad, you're literally trying to kidnap her from a hospital. You're proving everything I said about you. Officers, Jennifer stepped forward, pulling out paperwork. I'm Jennifer Martinez, attorney for Ms. Olivia Hartwell. I've just filed an emergency custody petition for Madison Hartwell on the grounds that Mr. Richard Hartwell and his wife conspired to cover up the rape of a minor, facilitated identity fraud, and this morning attempted to drug Ms. Olivia Hartwell with Rohypnol. One of the officers took the paperwork, scanning it quickly. Mr. Hartwell, I'm going to need you to step away from the minor. She's my daughter, my father shouted. She's his granddaughter, I said quietly. He just doesn't want to admit it. Madison's eyes fluttered open at my voice. Liv, she mumbled. What's happening? Your grandfather is trying to take you away, I said gently, kneeling beside her wheelchair. But I'm not going to let him. Grandfather? Madison's voice was slurred from sedation, but confusion was clearing into understanding. Dad is actually my grandfather? The second officer was speaking into his radio now. We need a supervisor and CPS to St. Mary's Hospital. We've got a potential custodial interference situation involving a minor. My father's face had gone from red to white. He was realizing, finally, that he'd lost control of the narrative. That his desperate attempt to take Madison and run had just made everything worse. Madison, honey, he tried, his voice softening. You don't understand what's happening. Your mother and I love you. Everything we did was to protect you. You drugged my mother, Madison said, and despite the sedation, her voice was clear. Cold. You tried to drug her so she'd miss graduation. So nobody would ask questions about your perfect family. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I don't know who you are. I don't know how to think of you as my mother, but I know they've been lying to me my whole life. And I know I don't want to go anywhere with them. It was the first time she'd called them instead of my parents. Something in my father broke. He lunged toward the wheelchair, reaching for Madison. You're coming with me, you ungrateful. He didn't finish the sentence because one of the officers tackled him to the ground. Everything happened very fast after that. My father was handcuffed. Miranda rights were read. Jennifer was talking rapidly to the CPS worker who'd just arrived. Madison was crying, being wheeled back to her room by a nurse. And I stood in the middle of the hospital lobby, watching my father, the man who'd raised me, who'd protected his brother after he raped me, who'd stolen my child and tried to drug me this morning, being led away in handcuffs. He looked at me once as they took him past. His eyes held no remorse. No apology. Just cold, calculating assessment. You have no idea what you've started, he said quietly, so only I could hear. James isn't going to let this go. And there are others who'll want to keep this quiet. You've made yourself a target, Olivia. Then he was gone, loaded into a police car along with any remaining illusion that my family had ever been normal. Jennifer put a hand on my shoulder. That sounded like a threat. It was, I said numbly. He's saying Uncle James is going to come after me. Then we make sure he can't. Jennifer pulled out her phone. I'm calling the FBI. If James Hartwell has been working with children under an assumed name, that's federal. And if your parents helped him flee, that's conspiracy. While she made the call, I went back to Madison's room. She was sitting up in bed now, the sedation wearing off, her eyes red from crying. Hey, I said softly from the doorway. Can I come in? She nodded, not looking at me. I sat in the chair beside her bed, and for a long moment, we just existed in silence. I don't know how to do this, Madison finally said. I don't know how to be your daughter. I don't even know how to think about it. I don't know how to be your mother, I admitted. But maybe we can figure it out together. Or maybe we can't. Maybe the best we can do is try to be something new. Something that doesn't fit into the boxes they created for us. She looked at me then, really looked at me. Do I look like him? The man who raped you? The question gutted me. I don't remember what he looks like, I said honestly. I blocked it out so completely that even now, I can't picture his face. But you know what? You look like you. And maybe that's enough. Madison's face crumpled. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry for existing, for being born, for... No! I grabbed her hands, held them tight. Don't you dare apologize for existing. What happened to me wasn't your fault. What they did wasn't your fault. You were a baby. An innocent baby who deserved better than to be caught in the middle of all this. But if I hadn't been born... If you hadn't been born, I would have missed out on knowing you, I interrupted. Even as my sister, even with all the resentment and dysfunction, Madison, you were the bright spot in that house. You were the one who was kind to me when they weren't. You were the one who noticed when I was sad. Do you remember that? She nodded, tears still streaming. That was you. That amazing person was you, regardless of whose DNA you carry or what lies they told. I squeezed her hands. And whatever we figure out going forward, whether we find a way to be mother and daughter, or friends, or just two people who survived the same trauma, I want you to know that I'm glad you exist. A knock at the door interrupted us. Jennifer poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, she said. But there's someone here who wants to speak with you both. FBI agent Sarah Mitchell. Madison and I looked at each other in shock. Mitchell? I repeated. The same name as. The girl from your summer camp, Jennifer confirmed. Apparently, she grew up, joined the FBI, and has been waiting 19 years for this case to break open. She stepped aside, and a woman in her early 30s entered the room. She had kind eyes but a jaw set with determination. Olivia, she said. I'm Agent Mitchell. We've never met, but we share a connection. James Hartwell assaulted me the same summer he assaulted you. And I've spent my entire adult life trying to find him. She looked at both of us. Now I have. And with your testimony, we can make sure he never hurts anyone again. There's more, she continued, pulling out a file. When I started digging after your story broke, I found something. Camp Pinewood wasn't the first place James Hartwell worked. It wasn't even the second. We've traced him back to at least 4 other youth programs over a 15-year period. And your parents' financial records show regular wire transfers to an account in Oregon. The same account James Hartwell has been using. They've been paying him, I breathed. All these years, they've been paying him to stay hidden. Blackmail money, Jennifer said. He threatened to expose their lie, so they kept him comfortable. Agent Mitchell nodded grimly. which makes them accessories after the fact to multiple felonies. The question is, are you both willing to testify? Because this is going to get ugly. Your family's entire history will be dissected publicly. Every moment of your childhood will be questioned. The defense will try to paint you as vindictive, as someone with an agenda. I looked at Madison. This was her choice too now. She took a deep breath and looked Agent Mitchell in the eye. I'll testify, she said. Not just for us. For all the girls he hurt. For all the girls he might hurt if we don't stop him. Pride swelled in my chest. Whatever else had been stolen from us, Madison had grown into someone brave. Me too, I said. Whatever it takes. Agent Mitchell smiled. Good, because we're going to need you. We've got teams moving on James Hartwell's location right now. With any luck, he'll be in custody by tonight. But as she said those words, her phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face went pale. When? She asked sharply. How long ago? She hung up and looked at us with barely controlled fury. James Hartwell was tipped off. Someone called him 2 hours ago, right around when your speech was being broadcast. He's disappeared. And so has your mother. The implications crashed over us like a wave. My mother had warned him. She'd chosen, even after everything, to protect my rapist over protecting us. And now they were both in the wind. The manhunt for James and Eleanor Hartwell lasted 6 days. 6 days of FBI press conferences, of my face plastered across every news outlet, of Madison and me hidden away in a safe house, while agents tracked financial transactions and border crossings and burner phone pings. 6 days of watching our story grow from a family scandal into a national conversation about institutional failures, rape culture, and the systems that protect abusers. 6 days of Madison and I learning to navigate the impossible space between mother and daughter, between stranger and sister, between victims and survivors. On the morning of day 7, Agent Mitchell called. We found them, she said. They were trying to cross into Mexico through Texas. They're both in custody. I should have felt relief. Victory. Something. Instead, I felt hollow. There's something else, Mitchell continued carefully. When we arrested your mother, she had documents with her. Adoption papers. Dated from 6 months ago. She was planning to have Madison legally adopted by a family in Mexico, essentially erasing any connection to you or your father. Beside me on the couch, Madison went very still. She was going to sell me, Madison whispered. Not adopt me to a family. Sell me to make this go away. We don't know that for certain, Mitchell started. Yes, we do, Madison interrupted, her voice stronger now. Agent Mitchell, my mother has spent 19 years treating me like property. Like a doll she could dress up and show off. Why would this be any different? She was right. And we all knew it. When's the arraignment? I asked. Tomorrow morning. Both of them, plus your father. They're charging all 3 with conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and in your parents' case, additional charges of child endangerment and accessory after the fact. Mitchell paused. And Olivia. James is being charged with 8 counts of sexual assault of a minor. We found 7 more victims. Girls he hurt at other camps, other programs. Some as recently as 6 months ago. 8. 8 girls who could have been spared if my parents had reported what happened to me. I want to be there tomorrow, I said. I want to look them in the eye when they're arraigned. Both of you? Mitchell asked. Madison reached over and grabbed my hand. Both of us. The courthouse was a circus. Media trucks lined the streets. Protesters held signs, some supporting us, some calling us liars, some screaming about false accusations. We had to be smuggled in through a side entrance, flanked by federal agents, Jennifer close behind. The courtroom was packed. I recognized faces from my parents' social circle, from their church, from our neighborhood. People who'd watched me grow up, who'd cooed over Madison as a baby, who'd never suspected the rot underneath the perfect facade. Then they brought in my parents. My father looked smaller somehow, diminished by the orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. But his eyes still held that calculating coldness. He looked right through me like I didn't exist. My mother, though, my mother looked destroyed. Her perfect hair was tangled, her makeup-less face showing every one of her 53 years. When she saw Madison, she started to cry. Baby, she mouthed silently. I'm sorry. Madison's hand tightened in mine, but she didn't respond. Then they brought in James Hartwell, and I stopped breathing. He was 47 years old now, balding, ordinary-looking. The kind of man you wouldn't look at twice on the street. And I remembered him. Not his face exactly, but the feeling of him. The weight of him. The smell of cedar and sunscreen. My body remembered what my mind had buried. Madison felt me tense and leaned closer. "I'm right here," she whispered. "You're not alone." The proceeding was quick, clinical. The charges were read. The defendants entered their pleas, not guilty, all three of them. Bail was denied due to flight risk. The trial date was set for 4 months out. But before the judge could dismiss us, my mother's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client would like to make a statement." The courtroom went silent. "Mrs. Hartwell," the judge said warily, "you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will." "I know my rights," my mother interrupted. "I want to speak." She turned to face the gallery, her eyes finding Madison and me. "I want my daughters to know," she said, her voice shaking, "that everything I did because I loved you both. Olivia, when you came to me pregnant at 13, I was trying to protect you from a lifetime of judgment and struggle. I thought giving you a fresh start, letting you have your childhood back, was the greatest gift I could give you. You took my child," I said quietly, but in the silent courtroom, everyone heard it. "I gave her a better life than you could have provided at 13. My mother shot back, and there it was, the condescension, the certainty that she knew best. Madison had everything. The best schools, the best opportunities. Built on a lie, Madison said, standing up. Built on covering up for a rapist. Tell them about the money, Mom. Tell them about the wire transfers to Uncle James. Tell them how you paid him to stay hidden while he kept hurting other girls." My mother's face crumpled. "I didn't know he was still. I thought if we gave him money he'd stay away, he'd leave us alone." "You knew," I said, standing beside Madison. "The FBI found emails, Mom. You knew he was working at another camp in 2018. Someone sent you an article about it. And you sent him more money. You chose to protect him. To protect your lie. Over and over and over again. I chose to protect this family," my mother screamed. "I chose to protect you from shame, from whispers, from being known as the girl who got pregnant at 13. I chose to give Madison a real family instead of being raised by a child. I made hard choices, but they were the right choices." "The right choices?" Agent Mitchell stood from her seat in the front row. "Mrs. Hartwell, because of your right choices, James Hartwell assaulted at least 7 more girls. Girls who were the same age as your daughter was. Girls who could have been spared if you'd reported what he did. So no, you didn't make the right choices. You made selfish ones. And you're going to spend the rest of your life paying for them." The judge banged his gavel. "That's enough. Mrs. Hartwell, you'll have your opportunity to speak at trial. This proceeding is adjourned." As they led my parents away, my mother looked back one more time. "I love you," she mouthed to Madison. "I'm still your mother. I'll always be your mother." But Madison just shook her head and looked away. The trial, when it finally happened 4 months later, was brutal. The defense tried everything, painting me as vindictive, suggesting Madison was being manipulated, claiming my parents were well-meaning but misguided. They brought in experts on adolescent pregnancy, who testified that adoption was often the best outcome. They produced neighbors and friends who swore my parents were devoted, loving people who couldn't possibly have enabled a predator. But then Agent Mitchell brought out the evidence. The emails between my mother and James, coordinating payments and warning him when authorities were asking questions. The camp records showing multiple complaints that were ignored or buried. The testimonies of 8 women, including me, describing in clinical, devastating detail what James Hartwell had done to us. And Madison's testimony. My 19-year-old daughter, standing in front of a packed courtroom and the nation's media, describing what it felt like to learn your entire identity was a lie built on rape and conspiracy. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. James Hartwell got 45 years. He'd be 92 when he was eligible for parole. My father got 15 years for conspiracy and obstruction. My mother got 12. And Madison and I walked out of that courtroom together, blinking in the afternoon sunlight, finally free. 2 years later, I'm sitting in a coffee shop near Stanford University, where I'm now a graduate student on that full-ride scholarship I'd earned as valedictorian, before I threw it away in a moment of truth-telling, and before the university reinstated it with a formal apology for their initial handling of the situation. Madison is across from me, showing me pictures from her freshman year at Columbia. She deferred for a year after everything happened, spent time in therapy, worked with other survivors. Now she's thriving, majoring in social work, volunteering with a nonprofit that helps children of incarcerated parents. We meet once a month, sometimes more. We're not exactly mother and daughter. The moment for that natural relationship was stolen from us. But we're something else, something we're building from scratch. Friends, maybe. Family, definitely. Survivors, absolutely. There's something I need to tell you, Madison says, setting down her phone. I went to see Mom. My stomach tightens. At the prison? She nods. I needed to ask her something. About my father, my biological father. About your uncle. If she knew anything about his background, his family medical history, anything. What did she say? She said she was sorry. Madison's eyes fill with tears. She said it over and over. That she was sorry, that she loved me, that she wished she could take it all back. And you know what? I think she actually meant it. I think she spent 2 years in prison realizing what she destroyed. Does that change anything? Madison thinks about this. No, she finally says. Her being sorry doesn't undo what she did. Doesn't bring back the years we lost. Doesn't help those other girls James hurt. She pauses. But maybe it means something, that she's finally seeing the truth. Even if it's too late. I reach across the table and take her hand. Did you get what you needed? The information about him? Yeah. Turns out there's a history of addiction in his family. Good for me to know. She squeezes my hand. But that's not why I really went. No. I went because I needed to tell her something. Madison's voice is steady now, sure. I needed to tell her that I forgive her. Not because she deserves it. Not because what she did was okay. But because I deserve to let go of the anger. I deserve to move forward. Tears stream down my face. You're a better person than me. I'm not, Madison says gently. I'm just choosing a different path. You got us here, Liv. You burned it all down so we could finally see the truth. I'm just trying to figure out what to build in the ashes. We sit in comfortable silence for a while, watching students rush past on their way to class, living normal lives that we're finally learning to live too. Hey, Madison says suddenly. What would you think about doing Thanksgiving together this year? Just us. Start our own traditions. I'd like that, I say. Maybe invite Agent Mitchell too? She's been asking about you. Madison grins. The woman who put our grandmother in prison? Yeah, let's have her over for turkey. Why not? Nothing about our family has ever been normal. We laugh, and it feels good. It feels real. Because this, sitting here with my daughter who grew up as my sister, building something new from the wreckage of lies and trauma, this is the victory. Not the guilty verdicts or the media vindication, or even the justice for the 8 girls James Hartwell hurt. The victory is that we survived. That we told the truth even when it cost us everything. That we found each other on the other side of the devastation. My phone buzzes. It's a message from Marcus Chun, the journalist who broke our story. Thought you'd want to know, Camp Pinewood just announced they're shutting down permanently. The board issued a formal apology to all survivors and established a fund for victim support services. Your story did that. I show Madison the message. How many camps have shut down now because of what we started? She asks. 17, I say. And 43 staff members have been investigated or charged with abuse-related crimes. The whole system is being reformed. Good, Madison says fiercely. Every single girl who's protected because we spoke up, that matters. That means something. She's right. It does mean something. It means that the worst day of my life, when I was 13 and traumatized and pregnant, wasn't just a tragedy. It was also the beginning of this, a movement, a reckoning, a fundamental shift in how we protect children from predators. It means my mother's attempt to drug me at graduation, as horrifying as it was, became the catalyst for exposing a system of abuse that had operated in shadows for decades. It means Madison and I, broken and reformed in fire, are part of something bigger than just our story. So what now? Madison asks. What's next for the famous Hartwell survivors? I smile. I was thinking maybe we stop being the Hartwell survivors and just be us. Olivia and Madison. Making our own way. Writing our own story. I like that, Madison says. Though I've been thinking, I might want to change my last name. Start fresh with something that's mine. What were you thinking? Mitchell, she says. After Agent Mitchell. The woman who spent her whole life making sure James Hartwell couldn't hurt anyone else. I want to honor that. Madison Mitchell. It has a good sound. What about you? She asks. Keeping Hartwell? I think about it. That name carries so much weight, so much pain and truth and survival. Yeah, I finally say. I'm keeping it. Because I'm not going to let them take anything else from me. Not even my name. I'm going to make Hartwell mean something different. Something true. Madison raises her coffee cup. To new beginnings and old names. To truth and trauma and surviving anyway. I clink my cup against hers. To mother-daughter-sister friends who refuse to stay silent. To burning it all down, Madison adds with a fierce grin. And building something better in the ashes, I finish. We drink and laugh, and make plans for Thanksgiving. And somewhere in a prison 2 states away, my mother sits in her cell, living with the consequences of her choices. Somewhere in a different prison, James Hartwell serves his sentence, his predatory career finally ended. And somewhere across the country, 7 other women, survivors who thought they'd never be believed, are finally moving forward, finally healing, because Madison and I had the courage to tell the truth. It didn't fix everything. It didn't undo the trauma or restore the years we lost. But it did something just as important. It broke the silence. It shattered the shame. And it proved that even the most deeply buried truths will eventually find their way to light. That morning at graduation, when I switched those glasses and watched my carefully constructed family begin to collapse, I thought I was destroying everything. But I was wrong. I wasn't destroying. I was freeing us. All of us. And that was worth everything. If this story moved you, please consider sharing it. There are countless survivors still living in silence, still trapped by shame that was never theirs to carry. Your share could be the catalyst that helps someone find their voice. Like and subscribe for more true stories of survival, justice, and breaking the silence. Every story shared is another step toward a world where abuse can't hide in the shadows. And remember, the truth might hurt, but lies destroy. Choose truth. Always.